Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
My name is Melissa Shaw, and I'm here on behalf of the Colonie Veterans Project. Today is Monday, November 20th, 2006, and we are at the William K. Sanford Town Library. Speaking with us today is Mr. Alexander Melas, a World War II veteran. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
I think I will start off with a question we've asked all of our World War II veterans. Do you recall where you were when the attacks on Pearl Harbor occurred?
When they what?
When the attacks on Pearl Harbor occurred?
Oh, yes, yes. We'd gone to the Palace Theater to see a movie, and we come home. We lived on Lark Street, and my father says, "We're at war." First thing that came to my mind was, nuts. It'll be over for a month to go. Surprise. And that remember very clearly.
How did you feel about those?
Eager to go after them.
Had you considered joining the military prior to December 7th?
No, I wanted to finish my high school.
Okay.
In fact, the next day when I went to school, it was bedlam, and 14 fellows had enlisted. 14 fellows went down and enlisted. The one fellow was born in France, and he wanted to go and attack the Germans, but he made a mistake and joined the Marines, and he went to the Pacific.
So, okay. So you definitely feel that that those events
Yeah.
influenced your
Yeah.
decision.
Well, I finished high school, and we went to work at the Arsenal. My friend and I, who just passed away, he was called up on New Year's Day for his physical, 7 days a week. And I was a little younger, and I was called up March the 1st,
Okay. And
Yeah.
what year was that?
43.
1943.
Yeah.
Okay. So you said were you working at the Waterville Arsenal?
Yes.
So you're living in the area.
I could have stayed
Prior
out.
to.
I could have stayed out, but I didn't want to.
Okay.
It was 7 days a week, 4 to midnight, no days off. I took a day off a month, and after 9 months, they blackballed me for taking too much time off. 9 days and 9 months.
Wow. Let's
But
see.
it was for my country.
So you're just out of high school, so you were single at the
yes,
time.
fresh out of high school.
And which branch of government or of the military
to
did
the
you?
Army.
You went to the Army. Why the Army? Any
Hmm?
particular reason why the Army?
Did I what?
Any particular reason why you chose the Army?
Well, yeah. I went where they took me. They drafted us.
Okay.
That's what they called it. So we went in the Army.
Okay.
And it was primarily from New York City up to Glens Falls, all the fellows that went in that day. And we were together through our basic training.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had anyone else in your family served in the military?
My brother was with the 10th Mountain Division in Italy.
Okay. Had he
Yeah.
he joined a little bit sooner prior to you joining? He had joined
He joined after me.
after.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then he saw the chance to get in the Mountain Division, so he volunteered for it.
Okay. And you said you signed up in March of 1943?
Yeah.
How soon after did you report?
March the 7th.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you
No, we signed up the end of June,
Oh, okay.
June 30th, and then they called my friend New Year's Day, and they called me the 1st of March.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And where did you go for your training?
Well, we went to Camp Upton initially, get all our equipment and all that, and meet all the fellows that were going with us. And they were New York City to Glens Falls, a lot of Chinese, and we took off 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and curtains down. And 2 days later, we found ourselves in Little Rock, Arkansas, at Camp Robinson. And the camp is still there, but it's mostly used by reservists. We visited a few years ago. My wife and I, we were traveling, and our buildings are all gone. They were shanties, and the only thing left is the slabs that the kitchens were on, because they had concrete. Ours were on pedestals, cold, damp, but it warmed up.
Now, how long were you there?
I was there about 3 months.
3 months?
Yeah.
Okay. What was your daily life like? What kinds of things did you do while you were training?
You trained, you worked, you slaved, you lost weight. And you did as you were told. Our corporals and sergeants were mostly Texans. And like I say, I thought I was skinny. I was skinnier when they got done with us. And then from there, I can remember quite a few things. In fact, it's all written down. We had one fellow. He decided to rebel, so he stopped washing. Didn't wash, didn't shave, didn't do nothing.
I'm sure that didn't go over very well.
The captain stopped by one day. We were inspecting us. He says to the sergeant, "Do you smell something, Sergeant?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You think this man could use a bath?" He said, "Yes, sir." He said, "All right, make sure he takes a bath every morning, every night, and washes his uniform at night." Then he behaved. And I'm ashamed to say he was from Albany,
Oh, really?
but he was putting up a little rebellion. But it was good. It was good. You met people from all over the country, especially Southerners. You never heard the Southern accent before. And Arkansas is a pretty state. Not out by the Oklahoma border. There it's flat until you get way up into to the mountains. But around Little Rock, it's a beautiful state.
Oh, good. Did you find it more comforting having known some people when you went out to training? You said there were you knew 14 people?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met a lot of fellas, like I say, from all over. We used to argue New York City's where all the hoodlums are, better upstate.
And where did you go from there? Did you receive your orders from there?
Yeah, they ran a special program. It depended on your IQ. And there was a special training program where they sent about 12 of us down to Louisiana State. And then from there, they sent us up to Penn State College, Army Specialized Training Program. Well, I couldn't do anything there. I had commercial subjects in high school, and I can't learn algebra and all that in 3 months. And I lasted there about 6 months. And then they sent me back down to Little Rock. And from there I went to Fort Smith, Arkansas. I said, good, I'm going to get away from Arkansas. No way. Well, Little Rock is nice. Fort Smith is as flat as this table. And it's right on the Oklahoma border. And that's where my unit was.
Okay.
Yeah. And they were primarily from Tennessee and Ohio. And those poor boys, they took their training at Camp Erie, which was way up on Lake Erie in Ohio, in January, February, and March, the Southern boys. And they were glad to get south and get warmed up. They are lifelong friends, and there's a few left. We, this one fellow used to put out a little message thing for us. He passed away, and nobody's taken it over. But the division, they have a newspaper, and all the different units are in it, so you get to hear from them.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Now, did you receive your orders? Where did you go from there, from Fort Smith? Where did you end up after that?
Well, I went to Fort Smith, and then after we got done at Camp Chaffee, we got our orders, go overseas. And we were up all night loading our vehicles on trucks, using bricks, anything to drive nails, and they took a secret way, because it was wartime, and it took us 4 days to get to New York. And we went to Camp Shanks, across the river from New York City. And we waited there, and I don't know who unloaded our trucks, but somebody did it. And they loaded them into boats, and we were there about a week. And then we went to New York one day, but you had to take all your patches off so they wouldn't know what outfit we were with. And then they got us ready to go. They took at these small boats. They took us over by the docks and loaded us onto a freighter, the Liberty ships. And next day, away we went. And we went out through New York Harbor. What's the first thing we saw? A freighter that had been sunken within sight of New York City.
Really?
Yeah, that close. And then once we passed that, they zigzagged all the way across the ocean. We were escorted by blimps. They were looking for submarines. And then when we got so far that their distance was cut off, they couldn't go any further, we were by ourselves. But we had destroyer escorts around the ship, plus an aircraft carrier in the middle, and they were constantly going around. We had one scare halfway across. They picked up something, and I was down below, and you could hear the depth charges being dropped, and we all ran up to see what was going on. You could see this boat way out on the horizon going round and round, dropping depth charges. He picked up something, and then there was a big liner, the Ile de France, and that captain panicked, and he picked up speed. I thought we were going to get rammed. They were so close to our ship, you could recognize anybody on that ship if you know them.
So you were, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, continue.
And like I say, it took us 15 days to get across, and finally we got near Le Havre, with the port. We stopped, and a boat come out with the harbor pilots, these old Frenchmen, and they took our boat into harbor. What did you see? Smokestacks from boats sticking up from the water where the Germans had bombed them. And they had found a path for the boats to get in there. And then we got in, and they dropped us off. It was probably 8 o'clock at night. Well, our company stayed down there in Le Havre, and our section had to go up with the rest of the company, an 80-mile ride at night up through the mountains. And but I say it was March, but it wasn't cold. I was a Gulf Stream had something to do with it. And then we got up to this little town, and later we found out the next day, this town called Forges-les-Eaux. It was a mineral spring town like Saratoga. No damage, no whatsoever. And the company come up after they had loaded all the vehicles. And I remember one fellow especially, but before we left Camp Chaffee, he says, "I'm not going overseas, Al." I said, "Why, Sam?" He said, "My sinuses." Well, one of the fellows was going down Le Havre. Where was Sammy? He was in the replacement battalion. They rechecked him, found out nothing wrong with his sinuses. They shipped him over as a replacement instead of staying with his outfit. But we were there about 2 months. We had to check all the vehicles after they were unloaded. And then we took off, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we were sleeping. We had a nice chateau, is actually what it was, on the main street. And we heard tanks going by. Said, "Up, they're moving." So the next day, we started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And they took us just, about 19, 20 miles outside of town to a place called, they call it the Panzer Forest. The Panzer is a German word for tank. And we stopped there for the night. And we had a brand new truck, and wouldn't move too fast, but convoys never move fast. But anyway, I raised the hood and looked at the motor. The regulator was turned all the way down. I turned it all the way up. And next day we were all in good shape. The first place we ended up was up near Reims in Metz. Those were all World War II battlefields. And remember this one hill going down to a river. It was all zigzagged down. And you ran to go this way and this way. And then you got down there, you went across these pontoon bridges. They're made of rubber boats with planks bobbing up and down. And once you got across the bridge, you were in Germany. And then they had signs, watch out for this and watch out for that. And then we pulled up at one place. The quartermaster had a gasoline station, and they filled up our tanks. They were most quartermasters were black boys, but these were white boys, and we have requested they wipe the windshield, do this and do that. They probably heard it from everybody. And then we ended up Würzburg. And Würzburg was a beautiful university town. Why did the English bomb it? That's what I can't understand. They bombed out a section as big as Washington Park in Albany, right in the heart of the town. But the one good thing, they didn't damage one wine cellar. Then
Did you ever know where you were going prior to go? You said you ended up in France, and then you headed
we knew
towards
where we were going.
You did. They give you a heads up.
The signs were still up. And then we crossed into Germany, and when you entered Germany, the roads, the streets, they had planted mines across, and they interconnected them, so you couldn't get through without blowing off a tire. Well, our engineers took them out, and then they filled the holes. But what happened? The dirt settled, and the first one I come through, plump, plump, plump. All of a sudden, I hear a horn blowing. Here's our maintenance truck behind us. This guy's name was Machenbacher. He was German descent. He says, "You got a flat." And so we changed it, and away we went again. Then the next town we came to the same thing, and so we fixed it. And then we take off again. I had 4 flats. He said, "Can't you see what you're doing?" I said, "Machenbacher, it was your people that planted those mines there." I said, "That wasn't the Americans." And he's spitting and sputtering. 4 flat tires. They were neoprene tires. They're very junky. And finally we ended up in, what was that place? It was close to Nuremberg, but south. And we pulled in there, and a place to sleep indoors. Real big building, brick building. And so in we went, nice and dry. And at one place we had stopped, a truck came by, he was carrying cots, folding cots. And we asked him for some, and when I jumped up, started throwing some off. Well, I had mine, so I didn't sleep on the ground or on the floor.
So was this the first time that you had? Was this the first time that you actually slept indoors and off the ground since you'd been in Europe?
And then from there we headed for a small town called the Germans called it Nierschan. The Czechs called it Nirany. We headed for that town. We didn't know where we were going. And I forget. Yeah, we slept indoors there too. But the nice thing there, the building we were next to had showers. And I said to this fellow was in the vehicle with me, Andy Anderson from Anderson, Nebraska. Can you imagine that?
I can't.
And so I said, "I'm going to go and take a shower." And so off I went, clean underwear, and walked in, and I'm standing under the shower, and here's this Lieutenant Bynack. He was my nemesis. I hated that man with a passion. "Melas, these showers are for the officers." And there was an officer there, a motor officer. He said, "Joe, leave the guy alone." Shut him right up. And the Czechs, they were there, and I remember a little girl all dressed up. They were so proud and happy, and they all dressed up to come see their liberators. And they had this one old German fellow who had lived there since 1939. When they went in and had taken Czechoslovakia, they had him with a can of grape paint and a brush painting out all the German signs in the town. And he wasn't moving fast enough, so someone threw the paint in his face. His handlebar mustache was down, his face was gray all over. And I don't know what they did to him, but we also found one woman there, and she had a little pistol strapped to her knee. And we had 46 Germans and that woman in the basement of a building that they had more or less arrested. I think they shot them because they were the ones that ran the town. And then we went. Let's see from there.
Now this was, would you say early spring in 1945 is when you arrived in Europe?
Yeah,
okay,
May.
so
It was in May.
in May?
April and May. Yeah, that's when the war ended in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Then they pulled us back to another part of the Sudetenland, which was where the Germans first went in and taken over the place. And that was very beautiful. Did I take you there, Ann? No. And this place had a town, Marienbad. Bad means baths. And they put me and this other fellow on a detail picking up the trash every noontime from the 4 different companies. And we'd pick it up and we'd take it up to this one town we were in at first and dump it. And then we go back up and detour around where our company was and end up in Marienbad and have a steam bath and a shower and then go back to where the company was.
Now you mentioned that you were driving trucks.
Yeah.
Is that what other items could you say? What were your duties? The time that you were in Europe, other than
I was involved with the parts and different things they use in the maintenance of vehicles. If someone wanted something, we had there was 4 trucks. They had one fellow had stuff for tanks, another for vehicles, another for weapons, and mine had the miscellaneous stuff. And that's how armor kept moving, because you had the parts and that, plus you had the people to do the maintenance.
Okay.
And the German army, we never saw anything like that of any of their vehicles, and we could move fast. And you had your food and everything.
How were your food? How was the food and provisions that you
Our
had
food
when you
was very good, because we had fellows that had been cooks in private life, and the one fellow had been a baker. When he was a cook baker, boy, could he bake stuff, cornbread and cakes. And my brother came up to see me once from Texas. He was in the Army there, and he said, "You eat like this every day?" I said, "Nah, not so good today, Mike. Baked pork chops with vegetables, mashed potatoes." And when we walked in the mess hall, they say, these fellows were from Tennessee. "Well, look at here, Head Melas with his little brother." They slopped it on his plate, and then he finished. He says, "Did it give you seconds?" I said, "If there's any left, I'll give it to you." He went back up and got seconds. Lord knows what he was eating. But the majority of our fellows were all cooks in private life. Yeah. But we ate good.
No, that's good.
What weight I lost in basic training, I put it on fast.
How do you feel the equipment, all the equipment that the American
that?
are? How do you feel that the equipment matched up to the German equipment?
Our equipment?
Yes.
It was the best.
Was it?
It was the best. But it was hard to judge it because their equipment had been used for so many years from the late 30s. And I don't know if they had maintenance type program like we had, but you would always see a lot of German vehicles off to the side. Yeah. And you know, another thing we noticed, you crossed into Germany, and all of a sudden you see all these white flags hanging on a house. The bigger the politician, the bigger the white flag. But long faces, and you'd see trucks going back loaded with German prisoners. And then you got into Czechoslovakia, and I remember one little old lady, she's standing there, she had 2 bottles of some kind of liquor. One was red Wellen's Green. She wanted to give every American a shot for welcoming and liberating them. They were so happy, finally they were under the thumb the longest. Sure. That's where they first went in.
Did you ever see any combat?
Yes, we were shot at.
Where was that? Or just a different In Germany?
In
or-
Germany, yeah. It was just before Nuremberg. But we just stopped, got out, and stayed out of sight.
Mhm.
It was strafing. That used to get a lot of with the airplanes. But they never hurt anybody. We were fortunate.
So you were never injured?
No,
And your unit didn't face
No.
too many casualties?
no, never injured.
Oh, good.
Knock on wood.
Do you recall how you felt when you were?
Scared.
You did feel.
But I'll tell you, in your training, we learned how to crawl under fire. That was worse. I did it 3 times, twice in the daytime and once at night. And the one time in the daytime, there was 6 inches of snow on the ground in train, and you had to lay on your stomach and crawl like a snake. And the bullets were going over your head. You could see them, and you'd look like they were going to come down and bounce off your head. But the machine gun was fixed; it couldn't drop. But crawling that wet snow, just come down on your shirt and everything. Then we got through and went back to our area, and everybody just took their shoes off and walked into the showers with his clothes on to wash the snow off. Yeah. I went through that 3 times, so I wasn't afraid of bullets. I know if you stayed down, you wouldn't get hit.
Did you carry a machine gun? What weapon did you carry? Rifle?
The Garand, the M1 Garand, very good rifle. It was a semi-automatic. You put the ammunition in, loaded it, you'd fire it, and it would do it automatically. Put another shell in. It had 8 shells, and the carbine was the same way. And then they gave me a machine gun. It cost something like $9 to make. We used to call it a grease gun because that's what it looked like. And that, I had a magazine about that big, but you could empty that in less than 30 seconds. I preferred the other.
Now you were in Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
Had the war come to an end, or did you know it was coming to an end soon after?
It just ended there.
Just ended.
It just ended there. Yeah. And the Czechs went crazy. And they still remember us. In fact, every year in Pilsen, Czechoslovakia, they reenact the liberation of Czechoslovakia by the Americans. The Russians said, no, we liberated you. No way. The Russians stopped at Prague, and the Americans went into Pilsen. And they have uniforms, and when the Americans pulled out, they left vehicles and everything, and they hid them from the Russians. They hid them in barns under straw, and they're all restored. And with the printing on them and everything, American way, and they've got the uniforms. When we went over, we met this one fellow, and he showed us pictures, and then he asked me if he wanted to get a holster, American holster. I said, what else? And I found them and I sent them to him. So they want to look exactly like the Americans. And they do this every year. And a lot of fellas go over, the ones that are still left, just to see it. And he ran a bed and board. And then he came here to the States. I forget what the year was, and we had a nice talk. And I'd like to go again, but I'm a little too old.
So you said that they were very happy to see the Americans.
Oh, they went crazy. They went crazy.
How did that make you feel?
Fine, glad. Like I say, they all dressed up, and I was sitting there eating on the ground. We had a hot meal, and the little girl sitting there in her best dress, and so I gave her a slice of white bread. They hadn't seen white bread in 6, 7 years. She didn't know what to do with it. She just held it. I think she took it home to share. Yeah.
Now, how long were you in Czechoslovakia, approximately?
Well, between Czechoslovakia and the Sudetenland, which is part of Czechoslovakia, about 7 months.
Okay.
And then, since they were friendly, we went into Germany. But that was beautiful there, especially the Marienbad, which was like Saratoga. That was a beautiful town. And I was walking down the street up there, and this woman passes in perfect English. And she said, "Oh, you're awful tall for one of our boys." I said, "You speak pretty good English." She said, "Yeah." She says, "I lived in Brooklyn for years." And I felt like saying, "Yeah, and you came to Germany when Adolf Hitler was in power." But the town wasn't touched. Anything that was historic or beautiful, they didn't bomb it or anything. And there was nothing there to bomb. It was, like I say, it was like Saratoga. It was a resort town.
Now, could you communicate with any? Could you speak German? Would you?
I picked it up fast.
Did you?
Yeah, when I was with the military police after the war, we had to go out and round up people that had been in the Nazi Party. They had a place in Munich where Hitler held his meetings, and they were cleaning it up. It was a beer hall, and this sergeant picks one of these guys up. He says, "Stop! Don't throw any of these away." There were all the registration cards for all the Nazis, all over Germany. And they rounded them up, and then the sergeant says to me one day, he says, "Take a Jeep and then pick up the German policeman downstairs and go where he tells you to go." And I would drive him, and we would go and pick up all the people that we had the cards for. One little village went in, and an old guy, and we pick him up. His wife says, "Is he going to be gone for long?" I said, "No, maybe a couple of days, maybe a couple of years, we're more like it." And then another place we went, in those days it was a school, now it's an office building. So we go up there and go up to the 3rd floor. German cop pulls out the summons. We arrested the teacher and took him out of the school right in front of the kids. Kids were mouth wide open because we arrested the teacher. And it was interesting. Then another time, I was walking down the street, and I see these 2 German cops, and they're running. And these people are looking, you know. And I go up this little street, we used to call it Jew Alley, because mostly Jewish people lived there. And they had this guy down on the street, and they were kicking him and stomping him, and they had these big heavy boots that the Germans wore. And I said, "Can I help you?" I said, yeah. So I got him on his feet. He was an SS man. He still had most of his uniform, and he was at the camp called Buchenwald, which was a big concentration camp. And a lot of Jewish people got killed there. And finally a Jeep came by, and they said, "Do you need any help?" I said, "Yes." And I had to push him up into the Jeep. He could hardly walk. And I said, "Take me up to the EMP station." Took him up there, and sure enough, he took his clothes off. What the Germans did, especially with the SS, we had our blood type, it was on our dog tags. The Germans would tattoo the blood type in the armpit. And if the arm got shut off, like say it was down here, they wouldn't know what kind of blood the man had. And sure enough, this guy had the thing in his armpit. He went to jail for a long time.
Oh, really? So you said approximately 7 months.
Huh?
You were there for approximately 7 months.
In Germany?
Well, following the war.
Well, the war ended in 45. And between all the little side trips and all that I took, I got home, I think around March the following year. I was
Okay.
here about 9 months.
Okay. And did that conclude your service at that time?
Yeah.
Yes.
3 years, 2 months, and 5 days.
You know exactly.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.